make the trek out to Burning Man for a week and a day. After a lot of work, oh, there's a lot of play. Party, 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 drama, 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 bitch, bitch, bitch. Year after year, they come back to scratch that itch. They all say their lives have been changed. After many years, lives have been rearranged. That change is what this show is all about. You'll see the impact of Burning Man up and out. So sit back, relax, and cancel all your plans. These are the stories about the shadow of the man.
Hello, and welcome to the Shadow of the Man Show. I am your host, Andy. Ah, yes, that Andy. Today, our guest is Inani Schroedinger. Schroedinger or Schroedinger? How do you pronounce it?
Schroedinger is generally how I pronounce it.
Ah, okay. So tell us a little bit about who you are. When was the first year you hit the playa?
Well, my first year was 1998, and I got involved in Burning Man because I think I might have seen something about it in the Wired magazine before,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know that really registered. But it really locked in when my mother gave me the Wired hardcover book, and I'd always been kind of like an odd eccentric child, and I was in my early 20s by then, and basically for me it was like a recognition because I had always done like cacophony society type stuff, but it was just like me and maybe a buddy or two or something like that,
Uh-huh.
wearing gas masks and stapling bananas in trees or something like that, and you know for me it was like, you mean there are others? I need to be there right now. So from that moment forward, I went to all of the regional events, which back in the days there was still the beach burns that were on Ocean Beach, and so we started hitting those up
Okay.
post haste. And there was the Flambe Lounge and other various events and interrelated parties and
So
various maker spaces.
so just for
Yeah, go ahead.
our listeners, it's I
Yeah,
take it what you're saying is you lived in the Bay Area, like San Francisco
that's
Bay Area?
correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
I grew up in the East Bay, and Hayward is where I spent most of my youth. And so I had the good fortune of being quite close to the cultural seat of the community.
So this is
We had
like
very active.
mid 90s. You were kind of bouncing around the Bay
Yeah,
Area,
nice.
like
Yeah.
hanging out with
So
Cacophony Society, doing stuff.
yeah, I don't think I did a whole lot of cacophony events per se, but but definitely anything like Burning Man related, Burning Man events, etc. I might have gone to one or two official cacophony events, but I've only more recently become more interested or integrated into cacophony society, or desired to actually just breathe life back into it.
Uh,
Um, and maybe start chapters, local chapters, something like that. You, you know,
so in '98, you first went. So how did you just go by yourself? Did you have a
no,
couple
so
friends?
yeah, so there's my friend Lauren. We spent a lot of our young adulthood together, and we lived together in an apartment for a while. And of course, he was excited about it as well because he was a freak like me. And we started hitting up all those events and developing costumes, and we were into all of these skill arts because we were in pretty good shape. We were kind of short but acrobatic kind of
Hmm.
individual. So
Yeah.
we would go to these burns and we would do duo acrobatic type tricks, where you'd link arms behind backs and flip end over end, and
Ah.
uh and then I found these stilts that were meant for kids, but the design was so cool. They were kind of diamond shaped, and you can slide your feet inside of them, and they're so stable and easy to walk on.
Huh.
And they only gave you a foot and a half of extra height, but it was just enough to make us kind of unearthly. And so we
Yeah.
made and then we worked at a place that sold copy machines, Icon Office Solutions. And the cardboard boxes that those copiers came in was the super strong, rigid cardboard, and we made all kinds of costume elements out of it, just hot glue, and
Huh.
get some stuff from Home Depot. So really scrapping it together, old school style. And
Wow.
we'd have these stilts, and then we did these long fingered hands that were kind of these, they had these point. There was several iterations of hands that we made, and of course we burned some of them, or we tried flaming variations or something like that. And but that was our trademark for a while. One thing that Dan told me about back witnessing us back in the day is what's cool about you guys is there was two of you. Because one of us would enter into the room, and we'd have had these I took a lot of my movement from Jurassic Park, actually, like the velociraptors and stuff like that. So I
Ah,
like really kind of mimicked that kind of way of moving and like kind of darting, like quickly whipping your head around and like staring someone in the face and stuff like
yeah.
that, and kind of, you know, and
Well,
like
two quick things we'll just
yeah,
mention,
sure,
but we'll get back to a little bit later. Dan, this is what
yeah,
Dan Miller, right?
that's correct,
Yeah. So, well, one of the original,
that's right,
uh, I don't know what we'd say, pranksters,
yeah,
Larry
yeah,
Harvey's roommate. Like, we'll get back.
that's
We'll
right,
talk about him about it in a while. And the other thing, making cardboard fingers that you're
yeah.
gonna light on fire. This is something
Well,
another thing I want to get back to later on, where it has like a Birdie Man used to be like, we're talking about like used to be free to radically express yourself, but it was quite a dangerous place. But
oh yeah.
I'm not sure you could light your like cardboard fingers on fire now.
Well, yeah, I mean, like there's definitely like some menace to yourself, like even on those beach burns back then, one of the the most hilarious examples. It was only a minor injury, but one of
Uh,
the most hilarious examples, my friend Lauren, like he made all this stuff to from like his father like installed carpet, so there's all kinds of stuff that he
ah,
made out of like the old carpet tubes and things like that.
oh
But
yeah,
one of his flaming costumes is he took the skeleton of of an umbrella and he made like a so that it would seat on his head, and then he took this like EMT conduit, spirally stuff, and like kind of stretched it
yeah,
out that made these big springs, and then he had like all these threshold strips that would go in between the carpet and the flooring, and so he'd make these kind of like battens that all these springs would protrude out of. And
huh,
like kind of tie them onto his hand. It was an incredibly dangerous and silly thing to do, but he did this thing and like basically like loosely tied like a bunch of terry cloth onto the ends of these springs and onto this this headpiece that he made out of the umbrella skeleton.
okay,
And then like he's there and I'm watching him tie this stuff onto his body. It doesn't have any kind of quick release mechanism or anything like that.
ah,
And the torches go in every direction all around his body. And they're only just like very loosely tied on. And they're like, you soak up in fuel. And I was like, I don't know. Are you sure you want to do this? Seems kind of dangerous. He's like, light me
yeah,
up, light me up, light me up. He's like very
uh,
adamant. So we start lighting him, and he has to like turn, of course, so that we can like get all the torches because the wind is blowing. Well,
yeah,
once he starts turning into the wind, those flames start licking his skin pretty good, and those that EMT,
uh,
well, it heats up and it goes right back to those metal strips that you have tied on those arms. So
uh,
he starts like frantically running and spinning at the same
oh,
time
oh,
towards the
that'll
ocean because
help.
he can't just run straight, right? Because the flames will hit him. So he's like, and like the torch scraps are like just flying off of him. Like the torches are bouncing like they're supposed to, and they're just like leaving this trail of flaming remnants behind him. And like he dives into the ocean, of course, cools himself off, and then just comes back to the circle. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like something to the effect of like, well, that was very interesting. And then he's got this blister, this like singular blister that runs the entire length of his forearm from elbow to wrist, about like 2 inches wide.
Wow.
So he recovered, he survived anyway. But like we used to also make like flamethrowers out of super soakers, which you can
Hmm.
really only use once because
To degrade the
the
plastic or something.
yeah, they degrade the plastic, but for one night you can really have a lot of fun. I made this flaming cod piece, where I took the super soaker mechanism apart and hooked it up to put it inside this some of that irrigation tubing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah.
so it just looked like a giant dick that I painted and stuff like that. And I set it up so all I had to do is like press it down, and then it would shoot fire out of the top of it. And
Wow.
yeah, so we just do lots of playful, kind of stupid, silly, like dangerous stuff. That's where I learned to breathe fire from like a schizophrenic guy that was quite certain that there was like cadavers in London that they're being used to control his mind and stuff like that. So it's good
Ah,
times.
good
Yeah.
times, good times. So yeah, so 98, you go for the first time. I mean, are you doing
Right. So
the full
I
week?
had
You're doing like the weekend
yeah,
warrior thing.
absolutely. So I have a Volkswagen Bug. I'm the only one with a freaking car, and this thing is not in the greatest shape. Like I'd already taken to the mechanic several times, and like it kept blowing out a spark plug. It kept like popping spark plugs, and like so there's a few things that happened. Like I think like the we were on the beach like having one of these bonfires like right before the event or something like that. And there's like we see this Honda like ripping down the road, and then it just like loses control like for no freaking reason and smashes into a light post.
Huh.
And like my friend's girlfriend had like some EMT experience, so she runs over there and everybody's fine, everything like that. But that was like kind of a weird omen. And then
Okay.
like we get everything like all packed into to the vehicle, And like I am not like 5 minutes down the road when I reach out to adjust my rear view mirror and it just falls off the side mirror, you know? It's just like, oh, so like I stop at a Walgreens and I grab like a makeup compact and I just duct tape that onto
Oh.
the side of the car. And
Oh, you
that's the
mean it
way,
just fell off and it was just gone?
yeah, it just fell off and it's just fucking gone. And it's like, that's it for that mirror. It's just like, that's it. Right. But I need to change lanes and stuff. So that was our solution for that. And then like coming up over
The
the mountains
Sierras.
there on 8 hour up over the Sierras. Well, guess what? That vehicle starts to have some problems, and
Uh,
we cannot go faster than 25 miles per hour, and it's putt putt
ah,
putt 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 putt. And that's
wow.
how we get. That's how we arrive at Burning Man. Putt 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 putt. 25 miles an hour for the whole rest of the way, and I don't remember the mechanic who was there at the gas station, but it's like as soon as I get there and like land all our stuff, and like mind you, this Volkswagen Bugs, we were like pressed into the seats, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so we arrive. I throw our stuff out, go in, drop my car off, get a pass to come back in, and all that stuff. That car is still out there. I mean, he was generous enough to give me $100 for it. So I mean, probably not still out there. Probably been scrapped. You know, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably like a
But like,
planters or somewhere. Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
and like
Well,
I thought we were prepared.
how long did it take you to get from like San Francisco to Gerlach then? I'm imagining
I
this
think
is
it
like,
was about 8 hours. It was about something like that,
oh, that's not too
especially
bad.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't all too bad, but it was definitely like, we left late, so we were up all through the night.
Yeah.
It was like a struggle. It's a pilgrimage, real pilgrimage,
That makes it
and
worth it. Yeah,
it absolutely was. And so like my shade structure that I designed was like I was like, oh yeah, this will work great. It's very cheap. So like I just cut these pieces of like PVC in half, like to 4 foot, because I was like, that's enough. You can get under there for shade,
yeah.
and then I had like 8 by 10 tarp, which I stretched. So I stretched a line up between the tops of the PVC that I cut holes in, and then like had guy wires like down all the way around, made a rectangle through
Uh-huh.
tarp. And needless to say, that was not particularly effective for very long. I mean, so we were at the beginning end of the learning curve, and we definitely got our asses beat. I was able to convince my father to come out and pick us up in the end of it, and but it was an incredible
Really?
and amazing experience. The way it is, like for most people, the first year that they go.
So
That
your
was the
father like he came out to pick you up from the Bay Area? Like, oh,
That's correct.
I'll
That's
just
correct.
drive up to Gerlach. Wow, that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
dad.
yeah. He stopped over and like stayed in a hotel. He was not really interested in ever going to Burning Man. He does not like crowds. He's not like a super social person. He's like very
Uh,
interesting, very intelligent, very strange, um, but like he likes to see that stuff like from a distance. But like, so arriving after it was all over was perfect for him. So he got to
huh.
appreciate the desert, the scenery a little bit,
Uh,
and he came and saved the day for us.
so your first year there, did you like hook up, meet up with anybody? Like, how did it like inspire
Yes.
you?
Okay. So like one of the first things, like, we're walking around checking everything out, and like, I've got photographs, and I'd have to kind of look through them to like kind of remember all of the things that I experienced in that early year. But
Hmm.
the thing that really grabbed me was Pepe Ozan's Burning Opera. Like as
Oh
soon as I saw those
yeah.
people, I was like, this is another level of depth. This is not some shallow thing that they sort of slap together. Like these people are deep into like something, and I immediately wanted to be part of it. So I was like, how do I join? And I already had kind of like a gothic aesthetic. I was telling you, like we had these kind of creepy costumes and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that year, the it was the Temple of Rudra, you know,
Yeah, I remember
where
that. Yeah,
yeah. So he had like all those like Vedic insect god creatures and stuff
oh,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, no, just for the listeners at home, people maybe like haven't been to Burning Man, didn't go that early.
uh,
I'm trying to remember. Okay, so they made these figurines out of like it was like
those rebar and wire mesh, and then
rebar wire mesh, and then like they put plywood like over it,
correct.
right?
So the actual figures, the kind of insects figures, he just kept as mesh, but all of the surrounding structure. So basically, he built these things that he called lingams, which is like basically the sacred phallus in the Vedic tradition, and and then he would so they would build these rebar structures, cover them with mesh, and then they would use playa or actually mud that they gathered from the hot springs is where it came from. At that time, you could do
Ah,
that.
okay.
And then he plastered it up, and it matched the playa perfectly, and then it cracked up
Yeah.
just like the playa. So these things literally looked like they were rising, made out of playa and rising up out of the playa. And these things, of course, they would have a wide base and they would taper at the top. So essentially, what he was creating was these blast furnaces, these convection blast furnaces, great
Yeah.
great chimneys,
Yeah.
and the fire would get so hot that it would melt the steel within and collapse the tower during the final ritual. So you do not
Wow.
even need jet fuel to melt steel beams, by the way. You just need forced air, baby. Little fuel and forced air. Yeah.
Pepe Ozan conspiracy theories. I love it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. What
yeah.
what a beautiful, brilliant man that guy
So what
was.
would
Like
that
we
do? One of those one thing is like, okay, like was it like pottery when you heat it up? I mean, it's like would it like
right. Well, like back then you could burn directly on the playa and like yeah, it would bake
but
into like
would it fire it? Like I mean, would you have these
it
like
would,
chunks
it
of
would,
pottery
it would,
basically?
it would. It's like it didn't really hold together because it didn't have the
Yeah.
ductile plasticity that would
Would
allow
like
it to
flake
retain shape.
off.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it would be kind of chunks of like brick-like chunks and we had to dig that shit out.
Yeah.
Like part of the LNT was like removing burn scars back in the day
Wow.
before we
So
had
did you
that.
actually
Had the chance to make
volunteer
stuff burn like
with the Pepe Ozan that year? Like the first year, 98?
yes. So we got right in, and they were very welcome, and they were like, "Oh yeah, sure, sure. Show up at this time for rehearsal, et cetera, et cetera. We have a role for you." Like we brought our stilts and everything that we already had, so it's like we were already suited to be in these roles. So one of the things is that so Pepe Ozan, like with his burning operas, what he would do is he would study certain cultures and their mystical traditions, and then he would actually travel to the country and meet like the sadhus or the shamans or the 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 voodoo priests, all of these things.
Hmm.
And he would actually get consent to do what he was doing, explain what he's doing, explain what Burning Man was doing. So it was kind of like this like consensual appropriation. It's like it's somewhat challenging to kind of for people to understand that was like that's a thing that you can do right now because it's like if you're like a white person and you're like doing this voodoo opera or something like that, it's like people might look at you sideways and like think that you're just stealing a culture. But like he really did go there and like and sometimes like even he would bring one back, to like help participate in the ritual and everything like that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was like it was not directly their spiritual tradition. It was like a mutation of it, like the multi-armed Vedic gods. Like how perfect is an insect? They have multiple arms, right? So he like
Yeah.
had all these insect-like creatures. And the other thing is that there were sects, right? So like these operas were massive productions that had like over 100 people, and they kept getting bigger over the years. And he would start many months in advance, and they so the sects would each meet, and they would kind of define like what they would do and how they would present. So they would have like kind of a rough outline of
Hmm.
like what does this sect represent and what is the relation to the other sects, and they would develop kind of like their choreography, their songs, things like this.
Yeah.
And we would meet regularly and we would do these things so that by the time we hit Playa, we had this very rich cultural flavor that we just
Wow.
like pop out in the middle of the desert around this like great temple and this final ritual. Now, that said, I would say that like most of the operas were kind of boring to watch. Like they almost never like started on time because there's like so much coordination. You have to deal with the weather and like all of the blah, 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 blah. So you're just out
Uh-huh.
there waiting, something's going to happen. And most of it is like incomprehensible to your average audience member. Well, it looks cool. And I see a lot of naked body painted people and they're kind of wiggling and like, they're very, I don't, right. I can only imagine what it was like for people to watch. For me, it was like I said, as soon as I saw these groups, I was like totally turned on. It's like this is some deep shit, and I want to know exactly what they're doing and what's going on. We
And
we
so
had all these
you're performing as well, like, or you're just like
correct,
helping? Okay.
correct.
And so
Like
what
so,
was the heyday of Pepe? Because I remember like what was my first year was 96, and I remember seeing like
right,
the Lingam that year, like so it was like
right,
96, 97, 98.
right. And
Did he do it
my
after that?
my memory is that like because I wasn't there for the very first ones, but like so he built one and it was like much smaller than the ones that came to follow and all of that stuff. And like Paradox Palak and the Dream Circus Theater just kind of impromptu like made a ritual performance around it. And so that was like their introduction and kind of marriage with Pepe's artwork. And from then forward, it just grew and grew. And Paradox is an amazing human being. I'm still good friends with Paradox and
Huh.
like he really had like a that whole culture is kind of like where the neo-tribal aesthetic of Burning Man actually arose from, for better or worse.
Ah,
Sorry, right? But like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
had the
yeah.
headdresses and all this stuff. We're bringing all these cultural traditions together because the shared cultures, like it was about like it really acceptance and inclusion. But like, now it's hard to kind of like do that kind of thing without being viewed as like stealing it.
Oh, like
And
cultural appropriation kind of thing.
so that kind of conversation, which is it's good to have that conversation. It's
Uh,
good. It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
really on
Yeah.
a
Well,
head yet.
we'll get around to that stuff. So anyway, so your dad picks you up and you're leaving 98 and the standard first year thing, people leaving like so what's your thoughts? When we thinking like, okay, next year
Oh,
like
absolutely. It's like I'm
like
definitely going back. It's just as amazing as I thought it was. So 98 was the year that Dan Doss Man had like the one tree there. And so if you're not familiar with that,
is that
well,
the
you were there.
one that was like it dripped water during the day and
Correct.
at
So
night
it
had
dripped
fire?
water today during the day, and it had to like flame at night. So you could actually kind of like bathe under it, but it's like
Well,
recycled
they
water, and like we hope
yeah.
it's filtered and stuff like that. So that kind of
Uh
there's some hygienic questions that developed the whole time,
yeah.
and
I
so
heard it was kind of a
but it,
hepatitis tree after a while, but
yeah, right, exactly. So it's like I
yeah.
don't know if I go under. He actually brought it back recently. It was
Oh,
hilarious because
really?
he didn't show up until after the event, and he'd been working on it. So he still came to the event and like kept working on the one tree, but like no one ever fucking saw it. I think that
Huh.
last year or the year before. It might have been last year. I think that was last year.
Huh. So
He's a
anyway,
very interesting character in his own right, but
yeah.
yeah.
So then you go back 99. I mean, so what do you get
Yeah, so
involved with?
so immediately I'm like, okay, I want to be in this opera like right from the fucking start. I want to be on the ground floor. I want to have an important role, not just be this bit player that shows up. And so the next year was Mysterio de Papa Loco, and so that's all like voodoo on based, and yeah, so that was incredibly fun as well. There's a video of it that you can find online if you just look for Mysterio de Papa Loco, and like there's a whole movie directed by Christopher Fueling who is there doing the direction of that, and I opened the film. So if you want to have a like, I don't really like to share like what I look like, and like I'm like it's like you like I like to be a mythological character. You got to catch me and meet me in person to like really get a sense of like who I quote unquote really am, right?
Yeah.
But I'm in that video. If you want to see a little bit of what I look like, I opened that video.
Oh, awesome. So who are you camping with? Are you camping with like the Pepe
Well,
Ozan and
right into Pepe's camp because it's like as far as I can tell, it's the coolest shit that's going on Playa. And there's definitely like other stuff that's going on that's really cool that was happening back in the day. But I was kind of like a more kind of mystically minded person back then. So like it really kind of like it was a vibration that resonated to me. And I still like I love that aspect of interactive ritual theater. And like
yeah.
I really want to bring that back because there used to be several groups that did that kind of stuff. There was like the Living Tarot and like again not a whole lot of them are springing to mind right now. But, later, the Mystic Family Circus kind of grew out of Pepe Ozan's opera, which part of that as well. And I missed that these large groups, large ensembles, like creating this super rich culture, and then we arrive with just like all this richness and just like mob the play, like we just take over like certain areas and like transform them, just like with our presence and the way that we acted and our choreographies and our chants and like all that stuff. It was just really
Do,
fun.
do you think are there still like groups like this nowadays, or was this like the heyday of this
Uh,
kind of years ago?
Please link me up with them if you know of one, because like I've got my finger up in the wind, like trying to taste for them, and like what I'm getting is that I need to create that if I want to see that again.
So was this like what you're talking about, like 98, 99 back then, kind of like where the heyday
Yeah,
of like
that was, yeah.
so how long was your involvement with this? Like, because I know
Well, really,
Pepe.
I just did 98, 99, and like I regret not participating in the further ones because Pepe died like not that long after that, and like I didn't really understand at the time what a rare and rich person he was, and
Oh,
like those individuals do not fucking come along every day, and like being able to participate in some of their projects is like a special thing, you know. And there's
oh
a lot of
yeah,
characters like that, it's like this isn't just going to happen again. These are unique, individuals that have like these wild visions that are special to themselves.
Well, it's kind
And
of
so
like the nature of Black Rock City and the Playa, right? I
absolutely,
mean, like
absolutely,
it's ephemeral. I mean, it's like the man. It's like why
right,
burn him? So it's like so you can build him
right.
again. You know, like yeah.
So the reason that I didn't participate in the arc and the narratives was because like I felt like it was getting overly refined, and they had changed it
Um,
from four sex to two, and I thought it was trite and cheesy. We had it was basically there was a sun and moon, right? It was I forget it was like sun bulls and like moon something, and it's like it was very like masculine, feminine, and it's like you could be a male and participate in the feminine or be or but it was just like so it bored me like
mhm.
the reduction of it like that and
So
like
what'd you
I
move
think
on to after that? Did you like volunteer? I remember you were talking
well
about you worked with like building like the man base or something.
well that didn't happen until much later
Oh,
that
okay.
happened as kind of like my return it's like when I got involved in
Oh,
building man base but in 2001 it's like I had kind of separated from like being as interested in the opera because I didn't really feel it like had enough room to like allow my creativity to unfold all the way
okay.
um I had an experience where my life was kind of falling apart. It's like I broke up with my girlfriend who I met in the opera. Um, I We lost our place to live because my best friend's girlfriend was loud and yappy, and we were young, and there was a school teacher that lived upstairs, so she won as far as like who got to stay.
Hmm.
It was still deeply offended by that because all she did was talk loud, and like we kept getting noise complaints. We weren't playing music or anything.
Wow.
Um, right? So lost my job, broke up with my girlfriend, and got kicked out of my place to stay. And so this is like close to like Burning Man time coming up, and so I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go out to the desert, and I'm just going to stay there as long as I possibly can. And and so that's what I did. As
Did you work
I
DPW?
well, what I did is I sent Dan like a an email. Um, oh, like that's my girlfriend. It's like a opening. Yeah, yeah,
I just want to check on you. You doing all right?
yeah, I'm totally
Oh, your
fine.
son said you were doing all right.
Okay, yeah, I'm totally fine.
I think
What's that?
I'm taking this and putting it on the casket.
Oh, that's awesome.
No,
That's
not
perfect.
not his stencil. I'm gonna spray paint.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right, bye. Sorry about that.
No, that's it.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
by
well,
the way,
for the listeners, I just wanted to say we're doing this interview. Inani is right now at Love Burn in what's Miami, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm in Florida right now, so you're live from Love Burn, and we burn tonight. You know,
And so you're
uh,
part of like you're volunteering, you're helping like set up and build and stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. So I had a major role in leading some of the interior structure of the heart. I participated last year. Last year, our effigy was like a rocket ship. This year, it's like this winged heart.
Uh-huh.
And then we had like a special ornamental surprise that we also had
Ah.
an addition that we rested inside a coffin. And like if you're not
Huh.
familiar with the controversy, there's been a little bit of clashing between the Loveburn community and the parent organization. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's just explain that a little bit for the listeners, and then we'll get back
right,
to the
so
story. Yeah.
so Stephen Raspa dropped a letter, and there's been some kind of conflict about whether like Loveburn was like really like embodying the principles or not. And I guess and there's been like an ongoing conversation, and they sent people here to check it out, and they said, well, this isn't right, and that's not right, and etc. And like, I'm of a very anarchistic mindset, and like the ethos really means something to me. So I don't really like seeing the ethos like parasitized. So anyone that is drawing off the ethos for some kind of personal gain, whether it's for their to boost their ego, to climb
Hmm.
some stupid like corporate hierarchy structure,
Uh-huh.
to try uh,
Or
it's
make
like I
money.
don't. Yeah, well, exactly. Like especially to make money, but also like I've loosened up a little bit around the money thing, like because it's challenging to do this all with volunteer effort because some of it does require like point people that are kind of holding all of the information. And in order for them to do that,
Oh
they need
yeah.
to do it like full time. And like if they're doing that full time, they're not making a wage or they're independently wealthy. So that really limits like who you can have in those
Yeah,
positions. We want them to
exactly.
be available for anyone who's capable of doing them. So having a stipend, I understand. But like there's a problem where you create a cookie jar and like people just start sticking their hands in it and then everybody else is like, where's my
Hmm.
cookie? And then like it's really hard to get people's hands out of the cookie jar. So it creates like
Yeah.
kind of an intractable situation that has not been the best for this community in my mind.
Yeah.
I
So
don't feel
anyway,
exactly about
like
that. But
so for Love Burn, there was like a dispute, and then like
yeah,
basically it's not like an officially
it's
sanctioned.
no longer a sanctioned event and like the by and large the response to that has been like good. We like it doesn't matter. And like
Yeah.
so I don't and like they've continued to be kind of persecutory and like I really question well like what the benefit of the regional network really is because it's supposed to be kind of preserving the culture, but what I'm really like finding and witnessing is that it's more like used like as a hammer to bash like actual grassroots communities that are well loved. Like this is a really well loved event. It's a very large event. It's 10% like the
Well,
size of Burning Man itself.
I think it's like it's was like one of the top three Burning Man events, right? I mean, there's a Africa
100%.
Burn,
That's right.
Mid Burn in Israel, which is another one that Burning
Right.
Man. That's another
Right.
story.
So I would
So
say Burning Man is doing it wrong. Like if they wanted to like try to reel in the culture, I think they fucked up. I think they really stuck their foot in their mouth.
well,
And
the
yeah.
whole regional network. I mean, like, God, that's a whole episode or
Yep.
three or four.
Yes.
So,
And like
like,
I've we've got a community that we started in Eugene, and like our events are not bigger than 50 or 100 people, and we got a fucking
yeah,
cease and
yeah.
desist letter.
I mean,
You
I
know, and
was
it's like, what the
involved
hell are
like
you doing?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I first became a regional contact. I started the Hawaii regional in
Mhm.
2002, and then I did it for
Right.
10 years before, retiring. And then,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Regional network is a different, just
Right.
creature
And
of God.
where how does the regional network serve the volunteers and the participants? Because as far as I can tell, it does not. It is only there to protect intellectual property.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll
Yeah.
get back to that. So, like, back to you. So you're like, you're done with the opera and
Oh, right.
you're
So
on the quiet.
right. So I'm going to Burning Man, and I'm not coming home until they make me. Right.
Yeah. So you're
So that's when
DPW or what are you doing?
this is when I send my email to Dan. It's like Dan, like I think that I'd like to join cleanup. I hear that you're the guy to talk to, and he's like, yeah, he gave me the lowdown. It's like meet me here and like all that stuff after the event, and that's exactly what I did. It's like I stayed and like cleaned up the ply with Dan, and Dan, as far as I know, is the first cleanup manager. He worked with Chris Sharp, who went on to do Paraluna and all of those like beautiful LED
Uh-huh.
stroboscopic sculptures. And it's very interesting because he kind of Chris Sharp had like his crew, and Dan had his crew, and they clashed a little bit because Dan had this kind of like more like I don't know actually I don't want to actually like encapsulate it, but I remember there's like this like we were also working with like some very like kind of rough and interesting characters called the End of the World Circus, and
Huh.
like they were really like kind of like it was like punk rock shock circus. Like these were like rough fucking kids, right? Like they would do things like eat broken glass and like puke into each other's mouths, like that was their fucking show. And like, you
Fun.
know, yeah, really rough stuff. And then like oh man, it was the commissary back then was so fun because there's just like a relatively small like shade structure, and like all of the wooden tables were just 4x8 sheets of plywood that had just like a coat of paint on them. And so like after dinner, we'd eat our food, and then a lot of us were artists, and we bust out our pens and like whatever and draw all over the tables, and there's like the most
Wow.
amazing art like over everything, and it's just so fun and so creative. And it's
I
like,
wonder if
yeah,
any of that stuff
they
still
burn
exists.
tires in their camp, but like they're
Uh,
like yeah, they were like I remember so Flynn Mouth was Mouthy Mouth was like the assistant manager at one point, and like so the End of the World Circus is like out, like throwing firecrackers like in the middle of the dinner on the table, lit, while we're eating, lighting like bottle rockets out of their ass and stuff like that. And like there's these two gentle Canadian girls that go up to Flynn and like say, "Isn't there anything you can do about this?" And like Flynn just kind of like grins and like smiles and said, "No, not really."
So do
Those,
you, so were
yeah.
you like was that just a one-off, like just that one year, or did you like
Yep, I
continue?
just did. Well, that was fun, and so it's like, well, the next year I want to do build. So like, so the following year, I guess, I guess that, gosh, was that 99? What, well, 99 was the year that I did the opera.
Yeah, I thought you were like
So
into like a 2000s or
2000. So I
something.
guess okay. So 2000 was cleanup. 2001 was build. Okay. And by the way,
Okay.
that cleanup, as far as I know, that was like the first like organized resto. Larry had asked Dan personally if you want to do it, and Dan's response was like, "Well, if I'm going to do this, then I need everybody in this city to be on my crew," which is like a brilliant strategy. He's like really intelligent, interesting dude, but like yeah. So there's a lot of cultural thing contributions that Dan's made, and like some of the it wasn't even called Resto then. It was called Cleanup. But there's a
Uh-huh.
lot of things that he kind of set that are still in play today.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
need to be utilized. But
Okay, so then you came back and helped
2002
build
or
the man.
2001, come back for
Yeah.
build. This is not building the man yet.
Oh, building
So
the
I want to
city.
apply for DPW to build the city, and
Okay.
so I applied for DPW, and now there's like a freaking interview, and I was like, oh shit. So like so they're like, yeah, yeah, come in for an interview. Interview. I have to go to San Francisco, go in the office, and talk to somebody to
Uh-huh.
join DPW to see if I'm fit to join. And like, so I'm all nervous, and I'm like, what am I going to say? Like, how do I present myself, et cetera, et cetera. And and I walk in there, and there's this giant print of me, like up in the office,
What?
that was taken by these French photographers, like around the One Tree in 1998, because I had my gas mask on and my stilts and claws and everything like that, and they did this all like this light effect thing where they do the time lapse exposure, and there
Huh.
I am right there, and I was like, and so I immediately relaxed. I was like, okay, I belong here. Right. And so I made it onto the crew, obviously, and I was kind of like essentially what you call a rousty these days, because like I kind of bopped around into like all the different kind of things that are done to build the city. I did signs, I did survey, um, spires. I don't remember if I did shade or not, but you know, pretty much like a little bit of everything. Um, and
So was it just for that 1 year, or did you do it like a
I
couple
just did it
years?
for that 1 year, so I
Yeah.
basically had 2 years. Uh, the cleanup year is also where I met Metric, who is a dear friend of mine who went on to run the Burning Man Work Ranch for 9 years.
Ah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and he's actually here for his first love burn, and I'm very excited to go and say hello to him. I really love
Ah.
that guy. Yeah.
Wow. So then,
Uh,
so after a cleanup,
so
after DPW, it's like where'd
one
your
one one story. Like
okay.
during, so I'm pretty sure it was the build year. Um, see, was it the build year or was it the cleanup year? Actually, I think it might have been the cleanup year. Cleanup or the build. I think it was the build year. But like, so we are getting our stuff together. There's only two vehicles. There's a truck that has like a very large camper trailer on it,
Hmm.
and there's my truck. And like, I'm essentially by myself. I think maybe I had a passenger with me. I can't recall. And they take off like blazing fast, and I'm like, well, I'm not driving that fucking fast. And they go come off the playa. They go up the road, over the hump, where the road dives
Yeah.
down on the way to the work ranch, and like, I slowly trail along behind them,
Uh-huh.
and like I come over that hump, and that trailer is on its side, and there's a bunch of
Oh.
DPW in the back of that pickup truck, and unfortunately, one of them, I think his name was Craig, was underneath that camper trailer,
Oh my
and he
God.
died. He died there on the spot. It
Wow.
was a very rough year. There was a couple other circumstances. Uh, and again, it's like I'm getting some of the years confused, but there's also like a motorcycle accident that we came out across there. One of the people was deceased,
Wow.
and we had to have him, like, the other surviving member had bones sticking out of his body, and they've been there all night, and they had to lift him out of there.
Ugh.
And with the DPW death, I was the first person on site that wasn't involved in the accident. They can't drive their vehicle, so I had to drive, and they had no radio contact because they're in this kind of like pit, so like nobody fucking knew. So I have to
Uh,
drive back to the work ranch and tell everybody what happened.
wow. That's crazy.
It's the fly will kill you.
Yes. Yes. That's like the
Be
DPW
careful on that
sticker.
road.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Coyote continues to tell that story to this day to get people to be like kind of a little bit more careful on those roads.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of what early 2000s. So what have you been up to on the playa since then? And what are you planning for this year?
Okay. Well, so I went once into 2010. Mostly it was just help Dan watch my stepson, because of, like, one of the things that I didn't mention is that, like, I fell in love with Dan's girlfriend during cleanup, and I ended up marrying her. But
Oh,
but
okay.
in the meanwhile, it's like she was like kind of hanging out with both of us. She gets pregnant with like Dan's uh, now my stepson and his son, and we also
Okay.
go on to like it wasn't really like a poly thing. It was more like we were both interested in her. She was hanging out with both of us. So, well, it was kind of that, but it's like wasn't like there's no romance between Dan and I. We're just good friends.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, hats off to Dan for enduring that. I remember sitting in the heads that were built by Dan Dossman, and like I'm up in those heads, and like and we're hanging out, just talking about whatever, and it's like, Dan, I got to tell you something, and he's like, what? And it's like, well, I really love like that girl you're hanging out with. And he's like, yeah, I love her too. And it's like, yeah, but Dan, I really love her. You know, and he said something to the effect of like, well, okay, I understand. May the best man win. And I was like, no, it's not even like about the best man. I just really like her and whatever. And but so like I ended up, you know, marrying her, but we all kind of like still stayed together as like a unit.
Hmm.
Like, but first she got pregnant and she told me, she was like, well, I'm pregnant with this kid. I really need to be with Dan, so like for a little while to help raise up this kid. And I was, and like, you know, I'll be back though, you know, because I'm interested. And it's like I'd never met anyone with that kind of integrity, so I was like, yeah, yeah, whatever, you know. Like, sure
Hmm.
enough, 2 years later, I get a knock on my door, and there she is, and she's like, so I'm curious what this is all about. And so we ended up getting married. We ended up buying some property in Mendocino County and building two
Oh,
intentional communities on 4 pieces of property, because a
wow.
lot of us have that that kind of epiphany, like especially that first time, we're like, wow, why can't life be like this all the time? And so we went on the
Yeah.
15-year exploration and kind of like discovering, you know, what it might be like. And I won't say like our communities were entirely based on like the Burning Man ethos. It wasn't like a Burning Man like intentional community, but it like had a lot of like those ideas at its core. And we had fucking Dan, and we threw these amazing block parties that we did not ask permission for. We just made friends with all of our neighbors, and like, you know, in a city of 5,000 people, like 20% of the town would show up at our overnight block parties.
Wow.
And like we would get away with it. Like the cop, we would close down the street because everybody on the street was on board. And like the cops would show up and they might tell us to turn down the music, but they never like shut us down or anything like that.
Ah. So are these
Uh,
intentional communities still operating?
they are still there, but like,
Yeah.
you know, as happens, there was rifts, there was disputes, and
Eh.
like, and I ended up splitting up with her, and and like we'd have made an agreement when things started to go south that I would be the one to leave, like because she said like I don't think that I can handle like seeing you carrying on with someone else in the same community, so like one of us has got to go.
Hmm.
And like we went back and forth on who that would be, and like really like she really like held the community together, so it really
Hmm.
was more appropriate for her to stay. It's like I built a lot of shit, like I built a
Yeah.
lot of the infrastructure and stuff like that. We all had our roles that we played. You know, Dan had had the credit so that we could get a loan, and
Oh.
like, but we didn't have a credit history, but we like had good income, or we were working hard for income. Like we were
Hmm.
all working, but like so
So
we all came up with our chunk, cracked our nut, and like, you know, just slowly built it, you know, from a little acorn, you know, sprouting this community
yeah,
tree.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
have you been continuously going to Burning Man this entire time, or did you like take
No,
some time
no.
off?
So
Like,
that's the thing, is that there really was no time for Burning Man during this project. So that was like a 15-year plus like hiatus. And
aha.
I only went once in the middle of that, and I went mostly just to help Dan watch Sage, because Sage, you know, Sage went like when he was only like a few weeks old, and for the earliest years of his life, he went. But then like uh, you know, my his mother didn't feel like it was appropriate for him to like continue going at a certain age, like
Yeah.
because it was just challenging to explain things, et cetera, et cetera. But then when he was like around like somewhere between 12 and 14, it started to be like okay again. And so that was kind of, I think that might have been Sage's return to Burning Man, is like is why I went back. And and that was an awesome time too.
So what
No,
years did you like? What year did you like stop, and then what year did you go
so
back?
98 through 2003, that was kind of my first run.
Okay.
And then I went 2010. And then after I split up with my now ex-wife, I came back in 2019. And like
Ah.
the way that happened is like, you know, we had been split up for like a year or so. And then, and you know, I was talking to Dan. I was like, and he said, "It's like, oh, we were just in conversation. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go and help build the man." And I was like, "Oh, really? You need any help?" And
Hmm.
he was like, "Well, I can put in a word for you. I can talk to Kimba and see what she has to say." And like, he got me on the crew, and I initially made a very good impression because I have some a fair amount of carpentry skills, and like,
Yeah. Well, you also work with
and
DPW and Resto and stuff. Yeah.
sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, I really kicked ass on that crew, and I was invited to join
And also, you
the
have like
man
the
base.
biggest credential of all, right? It's like you can just point to that poster for the one tree and just be like, "You see that?
Oh, right, right. See,
That's
see that?
me."
I belong here.
Yeah.
Fucking
There you
belong
go.
here. Right. Yeah, right. Um, so,
So
yeah,
you
so
got
they
in the
invited
man
me out.
crew. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we worked on the man, and that was a tremendous honor. And like, so one of the things they do is they kind of embellish the chest plate, you know, minimally, but and so there was some talk about, and usually there's like some kind of thematic elements, like all of like kind of like the fine delay detailing that you can't really see from the ground very well, that's all decided by the crew.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of and that really like helps root the crew into the project because you get really into these details that you get to decide go on the man, and it feels like just such a tremendous honor. Um, and so that was the metamorphosis year, and like we kind of thought that like the idea of cocoon and butterfly was kind of cheesy and a little bit like too on the nose. And
Uh-huh.
so like I had always had a passion for snakes, so I had a few side conversations with the crew, and I started like incepting this idea of like, well, snakes, because like they shed their skin, it's like a
Yeah.
rebirth kind of thing. And then like so then when it came time to like talk about it, then we all kind of agreed that snakes was the theme. And um, the the contribution that I had was to do this kind of like caduceus kind of thing on the chest with the snakes winding around one another. And
Ah.
it was the largest ornament that had ever gone onto the chest of the man, from what I understand. And I have this technique with an angle grinder, and none of them had ever seen that before, where I can actually carve with it. So I carved in
Huh.
relief like all these scales on the snakes, and then I stained one of them like a bronze color, and the other one I just stained with linseed. And then I created little standoffs, and then Smoke Daddy like backlit them. So we had those on both sides. Anyway, I was
Wow.
tremendously honored that they allowed me to do that. I mean, they came out fucking fantastic, and but
Oh, I'd love to
it
see a
was like
picture of that. Yeah,
I will send it to you. But it was like
yeah.
being able to just put my thumbprint right on his chest, right on his heart.
Wow.
And they also have a tradition where you get to build the heart. The new members of the crew, like the heart of the man, and so I had the honor of doing that with Ashes, another new member of the crew, and we made kind of partially at Steve 23 suggestion, because we were kind of struggling what to do, like the apple of Eris, if you're familiar with Discordianism. And so we
No.
made this.
What's that?
Oh, really? Look. Yeah, that's danger about Discordianism, but like it has a heavily influential role on cacophony society as well. But it's like basically a worship of the goddess Eris, the goddess of chaos, and it basically
Ah.
it was born out of the acid fueled conversation in a bowling alley between two old hippies, or now I mean they became old. I think they were young guys at the time, and they cultivated like this whole like religion around this Eris goddess, who's only like there's only like one major story about the goddess of Eris, and they really expanded on that lore. And then like later, like Robert Anton Wilson, he wrote the Illuminati trilogy, which is an expansion of the Discordian lore, and it's kind of
Hmm.
like the Discordians are the ones that fight the Illuminati. All right, so the Illuminati are like
Ah.
anaristic, which means like against Eris, and so they are so Discordians believe that chaos is fundamental, right? And so they're always trying to disrupt the hunch-brained like activities of the gray faces, who wish to constrain and turn everything into just these beige ticky-tacky boxes with no life or vitality whatsoever.
Oh.
So it's an incredibly like rich culture and community, and it's still
Yeah,
active today. You can find the Facebook groups, and like you will part everyone is a pope, all right, so that's one thing. And
yeah.
you are encouraged to create your own faction of Discordianism. They are often rivaling each other. You can excommunicate other Discordians, and you
Wow.
are encouraged to do it. And like, so they're
Yeah.
constantly rivaling and just like trying. There's a lot of trolling that goes on, and etc.
Yeah.
The number 23, and if you've ever heard the word Fnord, are
Yeah.
are sigils that relate to Discordianism. But
Huh. Well,
anyway,
anyway,
so
well,
yeah,
well, let's get back to you. So it's 2019. You were working on the man, right? The
right,
2020 happens, and everybody knows, it's like no
right.
Burning Man. The 2021 again, no Burning Man, but it was a
2021
Renegade
Renegade,
Burn,
and I was
right?
heavily involved in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I had been on man. So in 2020, like you know, I had this concept for a really long time for this like reverse mobile, where instead of hanging it stacked asymmetric levers, and it was inspired by the stage performance that I saw by Miyoko Rigolo,
Huh.
where she takes a feather. You've probably seen it, and then there's
Yeah.
yeah, and then there's a small like palm frond that she bounces on, and then there's a larger one and a larger one, a larger one,
Yeah.
a larger one.
Yeah.
She makes this kind of construction that kind of like is swifting, drifting and swaying, and like she puts it on her head, and then she like walks around, and then puts it on top of another
Wow.
like a pivot point, and then she pulls the feather off, and it all falls down. Well, I knew immediately as soon as I saw that thing that even that most of her deep concentration was performative, and that most of what was happening was physics. And so my brain started to spin, and like all the things that you could do with this concept. And I realized if you change the contour of the shape a little bit, you could get these things that each one of them to rotate 360 degrees independently and gain elevation. So
Hmm.
I thought I had this concept like many years ago, and I tried it with like little pieces of clay and wire, and I could never get it to work. And I was like, well, maybe I just don't understand physics as well as I think I do, and like this doesn't work. And then in 2019, I saw a piece where it was very clear that that's what someone was trying to do, but they didn't
Uh-huh.
understand the concept at all. I don't want to disrespect the artist because like
Uh-huh.
um,
Well, you saw something that you could improve upon. You're like,
right, but
aha.
basically, they ended up welding it all together because it didn't work because they didn't. And I sought out who it was that did it, and there was a rift. And basically, there were certain people that were the builders, and there was somebody that actually engineered it, and he was inspired by the concept. And like he had to leave for a little while, and then they didn't want to listen to him anymore, and they didn't understand at all how this thing worked. So they ended up like scrapping these things together. And of course, and the thing is dangerous, so they ended up having to like stick all these poles to prop it up. It doesn't move, like. But I saw it, and I see the stack thing with this feather on top, and and I'm like, what the fuck? It's like I didn't think anyone else in the world would have the same kind of concept going on.
Yeah,
And like
yeah.
someone else had the same idea that I had, and I was like, that's not how that thing goes. I know how that goes. And once I saw the large version of it, I was like, I need to think bigger. And that's I started playing with larger pieces of wood and concrete and stuff like that. And I
Uh-huh.
got it to work. I got it to
Ah.
fucking work, man. And it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. There's a lot of major Rigolos and his inventions and stuff that are a little bit similar. Then there's other like kinetic artists that also have somewhat similar, but they all like kind of freeze the pivot. There's little differences where it doesn't have the same free range of motion that my piece does. So I'm very very proud of figuring that thing
So
out.
is this something you brought to Burning Man or you built
So
somewhere?
I brought this to the Albert Desert in 2020 because I got the thing to freaking work, and but it's during COVID, and we hear that there are some people gathering in Albert. They do it in like a pretty dispersed camping kind of way. There's maybe like 100 people total through like various dispersed camps. And I was like, well, I'm going to bring a piece of art. And so I had this thing all worked out, and I bring it out there, and like of course, and like I wrap like LEDs around it, and like the LEDs are like so cool because the way that this thing moves so organically in the wind, at night it
Huh.
just looks like this moving constellation, and so you're like, what's
Wow.
going on? You don't understand because you don't see the rest of the structure. All you see is these lights moving and drifting around. It's a really strange, organic way. And like, of course, I got a lot of the hippie ravers and like the people that are used to Burning Man. They go to stuff like this and they're like, namaste, thank you for bringing the art on. And like so like I appreciated that. That felt good. But what really made me feel good is the locals that were just out there for Labor Day that sort of show up in their freaking golf cart with
Yeah,
a
yeah.
gun strapped to their hip and they're like blown away. They're like, what is this? How did you think of this? And they're like, have no idea about our culture. And and all these, they were so like, wow, and it's like, and that
So
wow is like
so
really
how
what you
did
live for as an artist.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. So how did that lead
Yeah.
to like Renegade Burn? Because that
So
was what
Renegade,
yeah, yeah.
Renegade, right. So Renegade comes around. So there's some of us that feel like it's time to gather again. Like we're not buying all this lockdown stuff, and like we can be careful. We can do this in a safe way. The event gets canceled again. In this culture that is like choose your own adventure. Take the risk that you want to take or don't. It's your choice. Has
Yeah.
decided to cancel this thing. Of course, Larry died in 2018 too, and like so he's not around to like kind of contribute to those decisions. And so decisions
Hmm.
are being made that maybe not be square in accordance with the ethos. But so it starts to become very apparent to me that there's a real groundswell here. That this is going to be a thing. This isn't like there was one that we didn't go to the previous year that had like I don't know 1,000 people at it or something. I think was
Hmm.
what was reported. Um, but like it became apparent to me that it's like people are really ready to gather, and this is really going to happen. And like so, there's some of us that on Man Crew that started to kind of bubble amongst ourselves. And I was suggesting this idea, this kind of reverse field of dream concepts is like they're coming. We should build it. Right? Yeah. So I
So
was like, yeah, we're gonna.
2021, like I mean, so what did you say there was to be
Yeah,
like 15,000 people show up in the Black
that's
Rock
correct.
Desert?
There's 20. It ended up being around 15,000, and those are BLM numbers, so they're probably pretty accurate. Um, so yeah, so we start to talk amongst ourselves, like, let's build them the man, like the full fucking thing. We'll bring the man to the desert. And so we start like plotting and planning about that for like 3 days, and then like I see a post from Sergeant Pepper online, who was one of the non-organizers of the non-event that we weren't allowed to do,
Uh-huh.
saying like, "Hey, is there anyone from Man Crew? Does anyone have any contacts?" And I was like, and I was like, "Oh," and like so I was like, "Oh, what are they doing?" I was like, I'm with Man Crew. I think that maybe we should talk." And he's like, "Oh, should I bring a lawyer?" And I'm like, "No, no, no.
Uh,
So we should have a conversation, you know." And like basically, like amazing, so Sergeant Pepper and Lofax are who I would indicate are and Woody Harrell or not. I'm not. I don't know
not the
if
actor.
I'm. No, no, no. I was about some Wade Harrell. I think that was it.
All right.
He did the map system so that people could plot themselves and you could find your friends and you could like pace your camp down. And this was all like decentralized, horizontal. So I'd say that these were like point people that had like concepts and like so it basically was all organized out of this Facebook group, Plan B, and basically, and it was just about ideas. Like, here are some ideas. We think these are good ideas. I designed this. Here's a tool that you can use if you wish to. How are we going to shit out there? Here's how to shit in a bucket. Here's how to take care of it after the event, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and the way that that all come together was really amazing. So we had our conversation, and like, he was like, I started telling him about our plans to build a man. It's like, we're going to bring you man. At that time that we had the conversation, they were still going to allow us burns and like art and stuff like that. BLM was like, well, just submit your plan or submit for a permit, and like we'll grant permits. But they got swamped with permits, and so they just had to put the kibosh on it because they couldn't handle the
Yeah.
influx. And so basically, what they decided is that you could not have like a structure that wasn't dedicated to either like a kitchen, eating, or sleeping. You could; those are the things that they allowed structures for. Anything else was considered abandoned
Uh,
property. You couldn't leave it there. You couldn't build it. Right?
huh. So
And
yes, this is 2021. Renegade Burn
2021,
happens. Like
right?
I so 22, 23, 24, like Burning Man happens again, and then what I've heard is like
I
there
didn't
was
even
a
get to the Manticor. We built the thing that we built.
oh yeah, what'd you guys build?
Yeah. So like what we found out is that they had already built a man. Not only that, they had several versions of it, 24 foot tall because of insurance requirements. But because once you get over 24 feet, you go up into another tier of insurance. And so
Ah.
we bandied amongst ourselves. We tossed back and forth. Well, maybe we could build a second man. Maybe we could have them like compete. We could flow like flaming trebuchet shots and try and light each other on fire and stuff like that. And they thought that that was cute, but they were like, "Have you looked at the insurance on that?" And I was like, "And by the way, we already have a
You know what? Look
trebuchet that
at
has like a we already have a trebuchet that has a telephone pole." And I was like, "Wow, these guys are so impressive." Um, so we decided to pivot and make a familiar for the man, and that's when we created the Manticor. So there's a
that.
the idea is we would do a creature that was like a friend of the man, and so a few ideas were floated, cat, dog. But I was like, me as an artist, I was like, if you want to engage me, then like I want something more. And so I thought for a little bit, and there is a mythological creature called the Manticore. It has the body of a lion, the wings of a dragon, and the tail of a scorpion, but also the face of the man. And so we decided to make this creature with the man face. We do it all built out in the man style. And so we did this, and we also gave it like cat-like features. And of course, all of these things have their own stories. And
Wow.
so meanwhile, the crew that had built the man gets a cease and desist a letter from BLM saying like, do not fucking bring that man here because they're worried about arson. So we ended up being the central effigy of the event. We went right to the center, which is what we had intended
Arson.
from the
Like
start.
it's
Yeah,
like what do you
and we
know what
just
it's
had to camp.
meant
We
for?
just had to camp with it the whole time. Yeah.
It's like, no,
So
this is our
I'm
kitchen.
sensing you want. All right, so I'm sensing you want to move the conversation forward. So like, what do you want to talk about?
Well, let's see. Let's just end up with where you're at now. Like, what are your plans for
Hmm.
bringing
Oh
to
my
the
God.
playa this year?
I didn't even like cover any of my notes, Andy. Like I've got hours to talk about here.
Well, we may have to
Um,
do another show sometime too.
yeah.
And
So one thing is that I have I'm calling it jai hacking. A spoonerism of hijack. I'm jai hacking the Burning Man Philosophical Center, and that has started with a Facebook group, which everyone who is interested in joining and like having a contribution that is not controlled by the central organization of Burning Man, and would like to have a voice about what our culture is about going forward. I would really love it if you would join, invite your friends. And my strategy with it is to make everyone who is open to it an admin so that we all have a secret or an equal like seat at the table, and to have high context and high concept ideas about the future of Burning Man, because I feel like the access point for that has disappeared. And there's been a lot of OGs that have lamented to me that, like, Larry used to be my way of getting my ideas like infused into what we were doing, and that has gone missing. I don't know where I fit anymore. And unfortunately, we are losing a lot of talent and a lot of deep, rich culture because these people do not know how to fit. And so I am really trying to create a place for that to happen. And I'm doing
Hmm.
this without asking permission. I'm definitely not going to apologize. And we are going to have a physical annex on Playa this year. We will be a part of Naked Heart. And we're going to build a pavilion with an actual round table, which will have the city emblazoned upon it. The cover of the dome, I envision us having like a brain shape on it, but we'll
Aha.
see what that ends up looking like. But the whole purpose, and it might have many features. If you are an artist that has like concepts that are related to what we want to do here, I really love your input and collaboration. We probably have space for you in camp. Um, the idea is to hold these conversations, and it's like it's not so much about presentation, which is kind of what the Burning Man Philosophical Center has evolved into. It's like we're kind of getting this from on high. Here's our podcast. Here's the history. But it's really like it really feels a lot like the past, like what those presentations are. And I want to like uh, well, one way that I put it is that we have an overabundance of leadership and we have an absence of vision. I feel like the vision has become constrained
Yeah.
so much by trying to make things accessible that we have this like Disneyana version of what we used to be, and we have lost this wild raw fringe, which I wish to bring back with its full heart and its full throat
Well,
into our
I
culture.
completely agree with you, and that's why like I completely support your project. Like,
Yeah,
I love like discussion. I love debate, and it feels like over time people like I don't know, maybe people feel afraid to like to speak up and like this Facebook the Brigham Young Philosophical Center like there's been some very interesting discussions going on over
yes,
there. Like, I
yes,
really encourage people to like go and check it out and join it
yeah.
because
Please do check it out, and please don't be like, okay. So one thing that happens is people will see like a certain political perspective or something like that, and it's like politics fucking sucks in these conversations, and I really wish it would just go away. But it's like I also
yeah.
don't want to tell people what to do and what to talk about. So it's like just because you see something presented in this group that like you don't align with, don't just fucking turn around, like talk,
Yeah.
and like
Express yourself.
and it's not just about butting heads and like trying to decide who gets to speak. Like the whole concept is like everybody gets to speak, and if you don't like what you hear, then fucking participate.
Yeah.
Say something,
Hmm.
move me,
And it's
you
not
know.
about deciding like who's the Nazi.
Right, exactly. It's like it devolves into that so much, and it just disgusts me. And it's like we turn each other into these cartoon characters on the internet that do not reflect our deep inner nature as individuals. And this is so antithetical of everything that we represent. And it's a scourge. It's a goddamn parasite. And it's like so some will complain about the woke mind virus, but what I'm seeing is the anti woke mind virus is just as much as a mind virus, and both
Hmm.
things they're not that good. And like anytime that like there's like some kind of like quick quip that you can do to like kind of like consolidate a bunch of ideas, be careful of that because like it's not really you thinking anymore. And the difference between a wise crowd and a mob mentality or groupthink, as someone might put into it, is that a
Hmm.
wise crowd is populated by individuals that have diverse and independent perspectives. As soon as you lose that, then basically that crowd is behaving like one person or two people at
Hmm.
most, right? And so like you don't really get that wisdom anymore. Instead, you have a mob, and that does not grow us or move us forward in any direction. And if you really want change to change the way people think, you need to see them as fucking people,
Oh yeah. Here, here.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's see. We're about an hour in. We
right.
only have about like 10, 15 more minutes left.
Yeah,
I think I'm just going to have you come back. We'll talk about some more
right.
stuff at another point in time.
My
But
God.
um,
Yeah.
but we'll just skip to the juicy nugget of this show, the shadow of the man. Like, so what is the impact of the man on you in all these years? I mean,
Oh my God.
it's
Well, I mean,
inspired you. You've gone back year after year. Like, why? Why?
it's hugely shaped who I am as an adult, and like and it's because it's a place that I fit. Because I like I said, it's like I would get this, like I used to do all kinds of like weird stuff, like just guerrilla street art and like things like that, because I would have this just like, well, first of all, I was born as like I born into a family that were Jehovah's Witnesses. So I was like born into this kind of very constrained Christian cult like kind of mindset.
Oh, yeah, we didn't even
And
go to
like,
your background at all. You want to just like
right. I
a
mean,
quick like whatever 30-second or just it's like, like your like what your life
yeah,
before Burning Man?
yeah, exactly. So it's like I grew up and like around the age of 14 and like I was taught like all these kind of crazy things that like the adults around me really believe, like such as demons are real and they can inhabit objects and people. And it's like imagine how terrifying that is as a child. I frankly think that it's child abuse to like teach these things, as though they're true. It's like how fucking terrifying. And it was terrifying. I remember like I saw a fence once that had a bunch of butterflies sunning themselves, but they had black wings. And so I didn't know what it was at first, and I thought it was like these mouths opening and closing on the fence, and I was like, oh shit, it's a fucking demon, like so I was always like scared of demons, and then
Wow.
ironically, one of my first like personas and costumes at Burning Man was a demon, and it didn't look anything like a traditional demon, but like I self-identified as a demon, which originally means
That'd be
God
funny if
man.
somebody came up to you and was just like, "Wow, awesome butterfly, man."
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So so I was really constrained. I was always like kind of like I don't know, smart, quirky kid, and like there just wasn't any place for me to fit. So I got into art because that was one of the ways that I was kind of like allowed to express myself or whatever. And around the age of 14, like there was an elder that gave a talk in the Kingdom Hall, and it was very focused about like not standing out too much and like allowing
Mm.
the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society to make your decisions on the level of how much you expressed yourself and stuff like that. And I was like, this whole thing's fucking bullshit. I kind of always suspected that. There's no room for me. How can like the thing that I most intrinsically am be wrong? This does not make sense. And so I say that is when my heart left that faith. And like, of
Ah.
course, I was still under my mother and father's roof, and so it's like I still go to the meetings and like whatever. But that is, and later I talked to my mom about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I know that moment exactly because as those words are coming out of his mouth, I was like, you're losing my son,' is what I was thinking inside.
Wow.
And like, fortunately, they also like eventually left the truth, but the quote unquote truth. Be careful of that fucking word. Every time I hear that capital T letter truth, which are like certain individuals, certain techno magnates like to use, you are entering a cult mentality, my friend.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that are empirically true, but most of the world has various perspectives, and
Hmm.
there are multiple things that can be true, especially when it becomes like to social perspectives, etc. Be careful of the people that think they are prophets of truth.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah. So I mean, so what's this all mean to you then? So like you found your community, like
Right.
it was like, oh, you're not
Place
such
that
a
I fit.
freak anymore.
Not only am I not a freak, but we fucking love you. Bring everything that you have and all that you are because we want to see the most of it because it that is the essence of what we are. And like so, yeah, when I see these kind of constraints and lockdowns and like these kind of like negative ah, there's a kind of negativity that I feel has developed that is all about constraining things for various reasons, and I don't think that it is serving us very well at all.
We do talking just like in general society or like within the Burning Man?
Well,
What
I
do
mean, I'm talking specifically about the Burning Man community. I won't say that it's all
uh,
like it's not as extreme as I'm presenting it. That's why I'm still involved and I still love it.
mhm.
But like I feel like now there's things that are under threat and that are worth fighting for, and we haven't even touched all of them. But
Well, I think
yeah.
that'll have to be another episode, I think. Yeah.
So sounds like you would like to wrap it up.
Well, no, I mean, we still have a couple of minutes left, but
Okay, all right. When
yeah,
we get to
yeah.
two, when we get to two, I have a song.
You have a song.
Yeah, I got a song.
Oh, awesome.
Some of it sing. Yeah. Is there
Yeah,
anything else
yeah.
you wanted to add?
Well, that's just kind of like very similar. I've been finding like with everybody asking like, oh, what's your what's the long shadow of the man in your life? And it's like I don't know. It just keeps coming back to just like community connection. It's
Right.
just like I found
Well,
like I didn't have a place in society. Then I came here and I was just like, these are my people.
right.
Like,
Well, Emil Durkheim was one of the fathers of sociology. Um, he grew up during the Industrial Revolution, and his first book was on suicide. And his observation is that we started to develop these systems that emancipated from these traditional like support systems, and so now you had more power as an individual. But oddly, it was not making people happy. The suicide rates were going up the more industrialized a place was, and like he was an atheist himself, but he also saw the profound influence of religion to connect things together.
Hmm.
Larry's father, of course, was a profoundly religious person, and if you listen to Larry talk about these kinds of things, then you can see that there is like this kind of atheistic spirituality that that we kind of are trying to create to kind of replace that thing that has gone missing. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, it's about community connection, but it's also about ritual.
Oh yeah.
It's about yeah, it's about like doing these things that connect us with one another in a bodily way. You know, like so Durkheim called it collective effervescence. When you feel that spirit of unity, you could be talking about a concert or like a football
Yeah.
game or anything like that. It's like when you do those collective efforts, and especially when they come arising just like unbidden out of a crowd, it's
Oh
like there's
yeah.
this great uplift of joy like within the crowd, and he called that collective effervescence. And like with the Burning Man, I feel like we create that totem to kind of project our identity, and that Burning Man is kind of like the personified um, manifestation of the community. It's like all of us like unite our attention into a singular point, kind of in the way that our own community of cells within us somehow unite their attention to create the sense of self. And so for at least a brief moment, we can actually feel the resonance of being one with one another. It's not just a high-minded
Yeah.
concept, it's not just a spiritual idea, but you actually feel it. And there's greater and lesser degrees of that feeling,
Oh
you know?
yeah. I mean, definitely. I think it's like even if people like can't put like words to it, it's like it's a common experience and a common feeling. It just also reminded me like what was one of Larry's quotes? He said it's like, "Oh, Burning Man is it's like religion except without the higher power," or something.
Right.
Did you say something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's like, and also there's like a lot of us that it's like, yeah, we'll say it's like, yeah, we don't, well, I don't believe in God. I don't, but at the same time, like, what is that fucking thing where we all like unite that intention and like like so I don't want to
Well,
call it that because of all of that the stigmas and the ideas and the dogmas and like
yeah.
I think what happens is like originally these cultural traditions did tap into that actual thing, but then they created symbols, names, and signs for it, and books and like all of this stuff, and
Yeah.
those symbols
I
and signs
mean,
become wielded like hammers to like crush other people with,
oh
and like the
yeah. I
meaning
mean,
is lost and destroyed,
yeah.
right?
I mean, to me, like
Yeah.
the basis of like any religion or Burning Man and everything, it's like it's fellowship. It's
Mhm.
community. It's connection.
Right.
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
people are always looking for. I mean, like people, like if you look at like studies of like putting people like in solitary confinement or like a children who are abused or like locked in a closet or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
like horrible things happen to people when they're
Mhm.
kind of isolated, and incredible things happen when people get together. And I think
Mhm.
like when it comes down to it, like a lot of religion, it's like that's like the secret sauce. It's fellowship.
Mhm.
It's like you go to the church on
Right.
Sunday or the temple on
Right.
Saturday
That's why
or
they
the mosque on
persist. That's why they
Friday.
persist. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's your community. It's just like,
It's
you need,
providing something.
yeah, you need a helping hand. Like, oh, we got to put this
Right.
barn together,
Right. And
whatever.
the problem arises what is like when you have individual egos that act as an intercessor in between you and that spirit of communion. It's like now you have somebody that is presenting themselves as if they're handing out that union with the rest of the community, and they are certainly not. That does not come
Yeah,
from them,
yeah.
right. That comes from us. And now they can manipulate you. It's like, well, if you want that connection to the community, then you must do as I say.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like I think Burning Man is very much in danger of that. And so are any of these traditions that provide that kind of cultural connection. When you start to have like avatars and like I think hierophants aren't entirely bad, like if they're good, but
Hmm.
sometimes they're not, and sometimes they confuse like what they are doing with like a kind of self-interest agenda, which deviates the nature of that connection into something that is exclusive and ultimately destructive.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point. The good cliffhanger for,
Okay?
episode 2 with Inani coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, well, we'll get all into that. Well,
Can, can I can I do my song and then I'll just hang up?
well, sure. Well, we'll stop recording and then we'll talk a little more after. But yeah.
What's that?
Oh no,
What?
no. Wait, anything last you want to add, or
Yeah,
if
I want
anybody
I
wants
want to
to
do.
get a hold of you, like any way you can
Yeah,
contact?
so track me down on Facebook. Um, Inani Schroedinger, definitely join the Burning Man Philosophical Center. And like, what I would like to say is that this is a poem that is meant to be screamed from the back of a crowded room or on the busy street. My heart beats like a hammer on an anvil. There is no man in command of this anthill. Once a, once a, once a, once a,
Once upon a time, I used to be a mystic. I followed for the feels, but now I'm realistic. Feet upon the ground, head held high. I don't need your respect. I will tell you why. My heart beats like a hammer on an anvil. Hot crush of my mallet, I'm an iron ore bendel. Fed from the fire of every former scandal. Bring your face close. I light your candle. These are the words that the giant speaks from the back of it, from the top of its lungs at the highest mountain peaks. My heart beats like a hammer on an anvil. Thunder is the sound that pulls away the mantle. So talk of the clouds and the winds and the gusts as I'm brushing back the dust from each apostle sandal. Twice upon a time I put my faith in gods. Made sense once, now I'm at odds. Feet upon the crown, head held high. No need to believe, I will tell you why. My heart beats like a hammer on an anvil. No reruns, impossible to cancel. Each strike hot, straight from the core. If you doubt for a moment what the shouting's for. These are the songs that the sirens sing as I'm burning to the ground in a glowing ring. Embers flowing in my mouth Embers flowing from my mouth as the sky grows dark, but the things you suppress become the strongest parts. Thrice upon a time I put my trust in teachers, drawn by the radiance of luminous features. Yes, I met a master on the road, and I had to put him down. And in the distance they heard a ringing sound. My heart beats like a hammer on an anvil. No regrets, nothing left for the landfill. Corrosive ideology, I will dismantle, and all bullshit will be brought to a standstill. Thanks, Andy.
Wow, awesome! Wow, this is the first song that someone sang on my show. That's awesome. Thank you.
Haven't you had Caveat on? You should have Caveat. He'll do some song.
Like, hey, I don't want to care about your philosophy. I care if you can sing, monkey.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I stuttered a little bit there because I was, a little bit on the spot. But that's part of the sacred. That's part of the Sacred Carpenter opera, and and I need help putting it together. So if those words inspired you, and the idea of bringing ritual theater back to Burning Man inspires you, I need help. I need a lot of people with skills, ideas, and talent to help me pull that off, because that's a large communal effort.
Yeah. Well, again, if anybody wants to reach you and be part of that effort, just search for you at Facebook Inani Schroedinger.
Inani Schroedinger. I spell it with an OE, to differentiate myself a little bit from the quantum physicist, because he has certain aspects of his past which I don't approve of. But the concept Inani means void, like empty, right? And Schrodinger, of course, we're familiar with the famous Schrodinger's cat. So it's it's this idea that the thing that presumes to be myself is mutable depending on who's watching me.
Excellent. Well, we'll leave it there and we'll get back to you. Well, enjoy the Love Burn, and thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, this is tremendous fun, and thanks for having me on. And you're doing a great thing here, and I really appreciate your effort. Yeah,
thanks. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, rate, and review it on Apple Podcasts. It just helps to get this show seen. Please tell a friend and help to spread the word. If there's enough support, we can do a lot more of these shows and publish more shows per month. If you would like to contact us about being a guest, what you think about the show, or whatever, please send an email to shadowofthemanpodcast, that's all one word, @gmail.com. You can also follow Shadow of the Man on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. The links for these pages are all available on the front page of shadowoftheman, all one word, .com. See you next month for a new episode of The Shadow of the Man.
Thank you for listening to this latest show. We have to make another one, so gotta go. Don't worry, for next month we already have one in the can. Very soon you'll be listening to a new Shadow of the Man.